In this video I'm going to show a little bit of my camera functionality, and I decided that it's probably a good time to do a video about the camera because I really haven't shown any camera stuff before in any of my previous videos, and the stuff I'm currently working on, I just don't want to really show any of that in videos just yet. So I think it's a good time for the camera video. Um, so first thing about the camera is I needed it to be able to essentially sit on a bit of a spring, so it has a soft motion based on the player's movement. So the way I do that is with this little skeletal mesh, and generally, you would script this sort of thing into your camera script, but because this whole project of mine is as scriptless as possible, I'm not scripting the camera at all. So pretty much what this does is it's just a simple skeletal mesh with a few bones in it, and the trail controller to actually make it drag. So if I switch that off, that's pretty much the skeletal mesh, and so that's what the trail controller does. You plug that into the top bone, and then you set a number of bones down the chain that you want to include in the controller, and then the relaxation there is how you control how much it will drag. So that's the basis of my camera, and works perfectly good with to give that soft kind of motion on there. So on top of that, so that's the basics of it, and then no Kismet, no nothing involved. Just a simple, the skeletal mesh gets attached to the player, and then the camera attaches to the skeletal mesh. So on top of that, I needed a little bit of extra control. So you would have noticed in my gameplay videos that the camera will actually stop at the bottom edge of the screen, and I think I've mentioned before that the reason why I want to do that is I don't want necessarily always to have physical objects on the scene that visually will block you. In some cases, like this case, I want to have the camera be the indicator that that's the edge of the stage. So if you were using the typical scripted camera, I think even the camera that is included as by default, in the third person mode, it will collide with collision objects or collision volumes or whatever the case might be. That's how you'd probably accomplish this with a scripted camera, but since my camera isn't scripted at all, it's just a simple camera that I place in the scene and I attach to the player. I needed some other way of controlling that, and so the way I'm doing that is I have some trigger volumes here that allows me to control where the camera will get blocked, and I have two trigger volumes, and I'll explain why just now. So in Kismet, all I really do is as I touch the trigger volume, and like I said, I'll explain why there's two just now. I'm just going to explain this bit first so you can understand what's going on. So as soon as I touch the trigger volume, I run into this delay, which actually creates a loop within itself. It's the finish is hooked up to the start, so this will run in a loop. And as soon as I exit the trigger, it'll stop that delay, so it'll stop this whole sequence from running. So All I do in this is I get the location of this object, which is actually linked to the player. Um, and the reason why I'm using an extra object is just so I can offset it to a specific place where I want, so the camera can the player's center is not where the camera is actually hooked up to. So I use this object. Um, so I get that location and I just expose the Y and the Z into floats. Because this is going to get calculated dynamically still based on what the player movement is. But since so you can see there on the with the world axis there, the X is depth. So I want to get rid of depth. I just want that. So I'm just getting Y and Z, and I'm feeding that back into a new vector. And the X, since I want to get rid of X motion, I don't actually get it from this object within the loop. I get it just once based on touching the trigger. So it gets one X value and it then ultimately feeds that one value back. So the X value over there stays the same at all times while inside the volume, but the Y and the Z will update as normal. And that's essentially how I get rid of X motion altogether. And the reason why I'm doing it like this is so I can place the trigger at any place I like, and I can get rid of the X without it being a static value that I feed in directly. I still get the X value, I just feed it in static as a static value. I don't pre-type in a value there. So this stuff, there's a compare bool there and all this other stuff. There was some stuff that I was messing around with. It's got nothing to do with actually what's actually going on here. So and then I set that back into a interp actor, which is just a dummy object that I use for the camera motion. And I'm going to explain the two trigger volumes just now. It's because of this stuff here. So what I also obviously have to do is, since the camera is generally in normal gameplay, it's connected to the player. Because of I want to get rid of the X motion, I need to attach it to this object, which is now has no X motion on it. So I have to detach it from the player and attach it to that object. And so the reason why I have the two volumes, and again vice versa, when I go out of the volume, I have to detach it from the object and reattach it to the player. But so that's exactly why I have two volumes. I have to actually start this loop and have this object calculate the position onto the player before I attach the camera to that object. Since this object doesn't always update, this isn't a loop that runs permanently throughout the game. It only runs while I'm inside of that trigger. This object might end up some place in the world where the player isn't even close to it. So if I attach the camera to it as soon as I start this loop, it's going to jump across the level. So that's what the two triggers do for me. So the first trigger, so these are the two triggers. You can see it there better. So these are two triggers. So this is the first trigger that you touch. That runs the loop, and as soon as you touch this one, it does the camera attach and detach and attach. So that's how I just get rid of that. The fact that the camera will jump to this object as soon as I attach it to it. Since I'm using the use relative offset there, so I can get perfect camera placements. It'll actually jump to that object to prevent it from jumping across the level or doing something like that, because this object might not have come with the player all the way. Um, that's what the two trigger volumes are all about. Um, this thing, just to explain this, this is just in a specific case I want to set a value for x instead of getting it dynamically, so that's what that's all about. So I can do that as well if I wanted to. So that's how I can control the camera, like blocking it on the edge of the stage. And I'm gonna show another functionality that I have in another more specific area of the level, but I'm gonna put that in a new video, so this one doesn't get too long. So that's the end of this video.